What's up, everybody? Welcome to SWAT MMA. My name is Jarrod. I'm here with Paul.
What up?
Coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. This is episode number 150, and today is going to be our UFC 280 recap and reaction show. Todd Duffy was originally scheduled to join us. He will be on the show next week, so be sure to tune in for that. In the meantime, grab your weed, fire it up, and let's get into the weed of the week.
Smoke weed every day.
Today, Paul, what do we got?
Today we have some Cantaloupe Kush brought to you by DNA Genetics. So this one is a mix of OG18 with Cantaloupe Haze. It's pretty nice. I like
OG18. I'm not real familiar with that.
I'm not familiar with it, but I feel like, like smoked one OG strain, you got a pretty solid base on what you're going to get from it,
Pretty much. There's a whole lot of them going around right now. Well, let's see what's up with this. For those of you that are listening and perhaps you don't live in a legal state and can't join us in smoking, I'd like to take just a second to tell you about our sponsor, Binoid. They make the best in legal hemp-derived cannabinoids, from vape cartridges, disposables, gummies, tinctures, dabs, and more. If you are in a state that does not have legal cannabis, you can enjoy these products and smoke with us. Get 20% off all of your order at SWATMMA.com. Click the Cool Gear button and bounce over to Binoid for the best deals you can find.
Also, click the link in the description as well and head over to Binoid. So what are we thinking?
All right. Let's see. Got a couple joints we rolled here. Actually, we don't roll joints anymore, let's be honest. We got a couple cones we stuffed here. Dude, I remember back in the day, I used to be able to roll a joint like a pimp. These days, dude, I haven't rolled a joint in.
It's too easy.
I don't even know. Since we went to that little trade show and that dude gave us those fatty papers, those are the last papers I've had. That was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's too easy just to stuff a cone.
It is. Whoever thought that up first, I think it was Raw, wasn't it? Whoever thought the idea of stuffing instead of rolling was pretty clever. They can sell the papers for a lot more too. I mean, you get like 6 papers for $2 with these OCBs, which is still cheap, but I mean, you used to be able to get a pack of zigzags for like $1, and it was like 25 papers or some shit.
Yeah, I mean, you still can, but
do they still sell zigzags just by the pack in like gas stations and shit? And that used to be what you had to do, but fuck, dude. Now I just go to the smoke shop, grab the cone.
Even a lot of like smoke gas stations and stores have cones now.
They're fucking with the cones now too.
Like,
that makes sense. I just saw a headline that said, I think it's in Colorado. Yeah. It said that like Circle K is now going to start selling weed at their stores. That's a trip, right?
I saw that.
I kind of figured that would happen at some point.
Yeah,
like they have something similar to that in Colorado already. They have these things called Grass and Go, which is like a gas and go, but it's a fucking gas station that has like this tiny little dispensary attached to it, and so you can fucking fill up and go buy your weed.
That's interesting.
Yeah, nothing like that here in Vegas. No. Dude, they're so tight on what we can have here.
We
with
barely.
Licensing and stuff.
Well, just think about it. All the different like legal cannabis states also have had like cannabis clubs, cannabis like that.
Oh yeah.
They legalized it in Vegas, but it really has never come to like full like fruition as far as like getting somewhere that's just a cannabis club rather than a dispensary with a tasting room.
And the barriers you have to jump through to get into the industry at all. You have to be wealthy or corporate backed in Nevada. Yeah. And that's just due to our gambling here. There's so much regulation when it comes to that.
There's so much money that's lined in everyone else's pockets, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And nobody wants to fuck with anybody else's money. Like, you still can't legally smoke in casinos here because they don't want to fuck with their federal money. It's just this weird tightrope where...
I think there's only one casino in the whole town. I think it's like that you can actually smoke in. They have like cannabis parties.
I heard there's a hotel here that's doing that. It's that small one.
It's small. It's kind of a fucking. It's kind of has a reputation.
I heard they hold fucking swinger parties and orgies there, dude. You can fucking rent the whole place out. It begins with an A, like Aliante or something like that. I can't remember. I've driven by it.
The
Artisan, yeah. Yeah, you can rent out the whole hotel
It's
starting
off
at like
Sahara.
$8,500. Yeah,
Get out
I've
of
seen
here.
a fucking sign for that
That
shit.
shit's ridiculous.
But yeah, I heard they're cannabis friendly there too, which
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well,
if
which
you're
makes sense.
renting it out for orgies, you can
Not
rent out
only
some
that,
weed.
not only that, they're like right next to Planet 18 and Reef, also like literally walking distance.
Oh God, then then if they're smart, which they seem to be, they've got deals hooked up with them as well.
Yeah, they got deals with the swingers, smokers.
Get your fuck on, get your smoke on, get your drink on.
Yeah,
Vegas, baby.
do all you gotta do.
All right, man. Let's get into the show today. You know, we're kind of narrowly focused because there's not a lot of MMA, boxing, or BKFC going on at the moment. But we had a massive event in Abu Dhabi, and we've got a UFC fight night next week as well with a decent main event at least.
Yeah. So, I think we should first go over UFC 280, and there's a few different fights on this card I kind of want to talk about. I want to start on the prelims though, where we had Bilal Muhammad taking on Sean Brady, and talk about a war of attrition. Two guys that really went out and tried to put a pace on each other, and in Bilal Muhammad's case, he had the fat like the more output, and he was landing a lot more often.
Yeah, he landed 80 strikes in less than 2 rounds, a little less than 2 rounds. He got the TKO victory at 447 around 2.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I thought Sean was going to win that fight. Really, Brady is, he was undefeated, up and coming, and Muhammad, dude, he's a really good fighter, but I have a hard time judging where he's at.
Yeah,
but
because you know what it is he's the kind of guy, like I was just saying, with that pace that like tends to get hit too. So like he has a lot of like fights that are like dog fights. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't have a lot of like wins where it's like him just blanking guys who are like lower, not necessarily lower level, but lower in the rankings than him. Yeah.
Well, his one big shot that he had, it wasn't his fault. He got kind of fucked over in that, which was the Leon Edwards fight, which he was doing well. And then Edwards dropped them eye pokes from hell, and that was the end of the fight, and then refused to give him a rematch. For whatever reason you want to say, I never believe a fighter is scared, but I do believe that fighters can be intelligent in their fight decisions that they accept. And if you were maybe more focused on getting that long-awaited title shot than you are giving a guy a rematch, I can understand that. But
I think that the rematch between Bilal and Leon is more meaningful now too, if it were for the title, and it was, you know what I mean? There's a lot more outside circumstances that can maybe get in between that happening anytime soon. But
Bilal Muhammad, go ahead.
But I think Bilal Muhammad's earned it at this point.
It's just what I was going to say. He's earned it. He's been calling for it. He called for Chimaev when nobody wanted that smoke.
I think he's 5-1. Well, 5-0-1 in his last 6. He's won 5 in a row and had that one no contest.
Mm-hmm.
He's only lost 3 times in the UFC in his career, and he's kind of one of those guys also that we kind of watched develop in front of our eyes. Like he's always been like this game opponent that has, really good striking and pace. But now I feel like he's more and more well-rounded every single time we see him go out. Like, when he beat Vicente Luque, I did not see that coming.
No, me neither.
You know what I mean? Just like a lot of these last few fights for him, I feel like he's at the point where I know that the whole Usman thing is probably going to be the next fight, but he should be an alternate or waiting in the wings at this point.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, it's still too soon for Colby. Yeah. Guys like Masvidal have fallen out of that title picture completely.
Chimaev has fucked himself.
Chimaev fucked himself in the division. Burns is still on the outside, because of his recent title shot that he had, and then now the loss to Chimaev, as competitive as it was. I think Bilal Muhammad should be in line after this inevitable rematch with Usman and Edwards.
Yeah.
I pray that we don't wind up with a trilogy there. If Usman wins or whatever.
It already is a trilogy.
I mean, you're right. Then never mind. It's just the weed talking right there. I was thinking they'd only fought twice.
Yeah,
I mean, once.
Because
I forget about the one way back in the day.
Yeah.
But
no, I agree. This whole division is they're all everyone's tied up or doesn't really have any serious claim at this point. And I think now, Bilal Muhammad, I don't know what you really do next though. Do you, because you know you're waiting in the wings, do you take a fight like a Chimaev, or do you do what Leon did and win your fights, and then when you know you got the shot and you're guaranteed a shot, wait until it's your turn?
That's a tough decision to make.
Especially with how dangerous everyone is at welterweight.
The problem is, and here's the difference between boxing and MMA. In boxing, for the most part, it's pretty acceptable to take like a fight, a stay busy fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're kind of seeing that right now with Tyson Fury. Okay, with his next fight that he's booking. And yeah, people are like, but we all know it's just kind of something to keep him busy till Usyk is ready. But UFC, you don't really get that, because that's kind of like what Bilal needs. They should, he's waiting around. He wants to stay busy, not get rusty. Give him like an unranked guy, just a fight to fight. But we don't do that in the UFC. He's going to face a killer next, and that's pretty risky.
The winner of Kevin Holland, Stephen Thompson, or something like that.
Some shit like that, or they'll make him face Gilbert Burns.
Yeah,
or something along those lines,
real
which is
dangerous.
Dangerous.
Yeah,
and it's almost like he has to earn the title shot all over again. It's not that, I mean, you should be able to fight anybody anytime, yes, but if you earn the title shot by beating one top guy, then you've got to just wait around and face another top guy to get it again.
Yeah,
is a rough path.
Well, my question to you: do you think Bilal has outright deserved that shot? Do you think he holds the power to where he could be like, I'm not fighting again unless it's for a title?
Yeah, I think he does, but the problem is that the UFC doesn't give a fuck, because who cares about Bilal Muhammad?
Yeah.
He's got the Leon Edwards curse.
Yeah.
Who the fuck cared about Leon Edwards? Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about Bilal Muhammad that I know of. I'm not shitting on it. I fucking love him. I'm just saying, like,
he's a hardcore fan. He's a hardcore fans kind of guy.
That's what I mean. When the UFC
he doesn't have much commercial fame yet.
Yeah. So the UFC has proven time and time again they care a lot more about your social media standing and the buzz around you than they care about the fact you've earned title shots. And all you got to point at for that is Leon Edwards.
Yeah.
So
in his own division.
Yeah. So, what about the Beneil Dariush Gamrot fight?
So that was a very interesting fight. So
this went to a decision which saw Dariush get the victory, right?
Yeah, I thought pretty convincingly as well.
I mean, he had a knockdown. He outstruck him 59-33. Gamrot did get 4 takedowns.
Yeah, but he had 4 15 takedowns. So it was really a tale of two halves in round 1 and 2. Sorry. We had Beneil Dariush kind of come out, had to feel Gamrot out for a bit. Gamrot got some takedowns, but the scrambles in this fight were next level. Like, I'm talking 2 guys who just knew how to just fight for a position in the grappling. Like, fucking, there was a good 2-minute long scramble that happened to begin this fight, and I really thought that we saw how Beneil Dariush could possibly be a problem for some, not a problem, but we're talking about now the
he's going to be a difficult out.
Yeah, no doubt. But I'm saying the new champ is Islam, obviously, and Beneil Dariush showed in this fight that his ability not only to have the jiu-jitsu side, but he showed a real serious takedown defense and ability to scramble, and even when Gamrot got those takedowns, he was popping right back up, and he just was never stopping. Yeah. That's one thing in a lot of these guys, even Charles this weekend, make mistakes in this way, is in a scramble where you're talking about catching submissions and everything like that. The moment you stop is the moment you're fucked. Because we used to do this drill when I was in high school. It was called the high head wins, and basically the coach would blow the whistle for 30 seconds, and basically you'd scramble for 30 seconds, and whoever basically came out on top had the high head. And that kind of was what they did. They just scrambled and kept going and kept flipping through and just transitioning, and even transitioning to different submissions on Beneil Dariush's side. And then in the second round, it was completely different. Second round, Dariush is defending every single takedown, landing big shots, and just looking like the guy who deserves the title shot also. And then in the third round, it was all freaking Dariush. She ends up knocking him down with about a minute to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I thought it was 30-27 on two cards and then one 29-28, which I had it 29-28, but it was a really good, really solid performance by Dariush, and I think it really cements his status in this division.
Well, going into this fight, he was ranked 6th. Gamrot was ranked 9th. And I feel that Dariush, unfortunately, is going to be unfairly in a position kind of similar to Bilal Muhammad.
Yeah.
In the fact that if you look at the top 5 right now, you know, we've got Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, all ranked above him. Oliveira somewhere in there coming off a loss. Yeah. I think Dariush deserves the title shot here because all of the guys above him have either had it already or recently lost.
Here's the problem, though. Now with new champ Islam Makhachev and not Charles Oliveira, none of these guys have fought Makhachev. And
right.
All of them are bigger than Beneil Dariush.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, all way bigger names than Beneil Dariush. Like everybody pretty much has at least heard of those guys, and so they're much more likely to get the next title shot.
And I'd say he's as talented as them, though. Like a lot of those guys. Like I think Beneil's on the level of a lot of these championship level fighters. I think if you put him in there next with a guy like a Justin Gaethje, who would like maybe try to think that would be a fight to get back on track, he'd be in for a real rough night. You know what I mean? Or even like if he ends up fighting the winner of Poirier and Chandler, like he's no easy out for any of these guys. Even if they give him Islam next, like he's.
I mean, he was scheduled to fight Islam. Yeah. It wasn't his fault that didn't go down.
Dude ends up breaking his femur, I heard, or something like that, and was out for a fucking year. That's crazy because that's like from what like a lot of people have said in the sports world. That's like one of the hardest injuries to ever come back from. A lot of people retire after that kind of shit.
That sounds horrific. Your femur breaking.
It's the biggest bone in your body, bro. So yeah, that was a real good performance by him. We'll see what happens next. Let's move on up the card. So now we had probably the most controversial fight of the night. We had Sean O'Malley taking on Petr Yan in a Bantamweight bout. Coming into the fight, O'Malley was number 10. Coming into the fight, you had Yan, who's number 1. Big risk for Yan. Ends up not working out for him, dude.
Yeah, it's a split decision victory for Sean O'Malley. Some controversy, some not. I mean, I tried to get both sides of the spectrum after the fight with the commentary, and I thought Michael Bisping's insight was pretty good. He felt that the fight was not a robbery, but he also felt that in his mind he had Yan winning.
Yeah.
But he could see how it could go either way.
Yeah.
And if you go look at the statistical breakdown, you know, it's you can see where the split kind of happens. We've got, you know, total strikes for Yan at 58. We've got him at 84 for O'Malley. But then you've got 6 takedowns for Yan, 0 obviously for O'Malley.
Yeah, and then you had 5.5 minutes of control time for Yan in those first 2 rounds.
Yeah, then you have that, but how much damage was done in the control time? See, for those of us that are old school UFC fans, have been watching this shit from the beginning, we're kind of used to there being a lot more weight being given to both takedowns and control time when you're on top of somebody. And with this newer scoring system, it seems like it's really shied away from that, and a takedown with no actual damage occurring seems to just be virtually meaningless, which I kind of disagree with, frankly.
Yeah. Well, and this is something I spoke to everyone I was watching it with. Everyone was like, how can they not score that for him? And I was like, well, this is the problem with MMA is it's the only sport in the world where you can fight in LA and fight under one rule set, and you fight in Abu Dhabi and fight in a whole another rule set. And that's the problem, is there's no, universal rules.
Sorry, folks, there was just a very loud noise. We just heard something. Super windy here in Vegas. Things falling over. All right, we'll carry on.
There's just no universal rule set where of judging or even in actual rules of the fight.
It's bizarre.
It happens in these kind of fights where you had Yan, who was controlling controlling O'Malley pretty well, and I didn't really think O'Malley was doing that great, like on bottom. Like he was working, but I thought clearly Jan was scoring in those exchanges,
Yeah.
with the control time. But on the feet, we did see Jan get cut. We did see Jan.
Yeah, Jan's face is pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
Let's keep it real.
Yeah, and we also saw, O'Malley do what we spoke about last week, and he stayed on the outside of the strikes, and that's honestly where Peter Yan ended up having his most success is when O'Malley would open up a bit and come into his range, and that's where Yan would get his shots back at him. So I don't know. It's real tough. Like I said, it really comes down to the judging rule set. Like under the old rules and how I've always watched MMA and understood how exactly, we value, like you said, what we value it inside of like scoring. I thought Jan won the fight. But like you said also, it's not the biggest robbery. It was a good performance by Sean. He really showed that he belonged in this division and belonged at the top.
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway. We knew what to expect from Jan. He was the number one ranked guy underneath the champion for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's the reason that we all who've seen him understand. O'Malley was the big question mark. Does he belong here? Is this too much for him? And you take the controversy of the decision, if you want to call it that, aside, he definitely showed that he belongs. He fought the number one guy and fought his ass off to where the judges thought he did enough, and many fans think so too. And even those who thought, Jan won, are like, well, it's
respectable.
It's respectable. I can see why you might flip it the other way. So that's the biggest thing for me is not the controversy, but Sean O'Malley really did show that he belongs at the top. Was it the dominant knockout that he wanted? Of course not. Was he lighting him up Conor McGregor versus Aldo style like he predicted? Not even close.
Yeah.
All right, but that really doesn't matter. He got the W.
I'll tell you what, he hit Jan with some fucking shots, dude. Jan, the fact that he never actually got knocked down was fucking nuts to me. There was this, I believe it was in the first. I think it was the first. There was an exchange where him and Jan both it looked like they had knocked each other both down, but in reality, both of them recovered and kind of, you know what I mean, kind of moved around,
stunned each other, and then kind of backed off.
No, because both went after each other, but they stunned each other, and then had these flurries that went back and forth, and they stunned each other at the same time, and it was just like chaos for a second. I was like, wow, I watching that was like watching, O'Malley really become a namesake, because we know him as far as the social media guy. We know him as he's got the crazy hair and the antics and everything. But this is where we saw Sean O'Malley, the elite UFC fighter. This is where we saw the guy who's behind all these words and the chaotic behavior and stuff like that. This is the guy that people who, and the UFC overall, bought the card to see. You know what I mean? And I thought that was the biggest kind of thing that was my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. Fight, we all know that Jan can beat anybody in the division on any given day. And by competing in the way that he did against him and winning that fight, Sean O'Malley has shown us the same thing. He has what it takes to be champ. Don't know if he's going to be able to do it because he's got his hands full with Sterling.
Yeah.
But it's going to be pretty exciting to watch what happens next and what the UFC decides to do. Now, speaking of Aljamain Sterling, we finally had this big showdown here in the Bantamweight division, which, being the big fan I am of the lineal title bullshit, I thought this fight was very important because it unifies the title in my mind. You've got the champ who never lost to another fighter with the belt. He lost to being stripped for drugs in another division that he was fighting in. Finally coming back, facing the current champ. And man, was it an ass whooping.
Yeah, so there's some underlying things that ended up
Let's go with it. It was second round, right? TKO. 72 strikes to 8, 5 takedowns to 0, 2 sub attempts to 0, all Aljamain Sterling. What were these circumstances?
Yeah. So, first exchange of the fight, really. Aljamain pushes TJ up against the cage, hits him with a couple shots, and then goes for a takedown, and TJ pops his shoulder out. But not on the level where it was like, oh, I can't move, like done. It
Right,
was
like we
like,
saw last week when they're trying to pop his old boy's shoulder
yeah,
in on the
Aaron
stool. Remember?
Picos,
Yeah, Aaron Picos.
yeah. It was well. I mean, obviously, anytime someone dislocates their any kind of limb or something, there's obviously a level of being compromised. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? But here's the thing: is TJ then keeps going. You know, he's a tough motherfucker at the end of the day, man.
can't take that away from him.
Yeah, he's been in these like high level fights. He knows what it takes to win, and he has that mental fortitude to get through something like that. But Aljamain Sterling was just too on, man, too on and too ready. He literally came in there, took him down, and just put a beat down on him.
He looked great.
Yeah.
TJ looked bad. He looked great. Now TJ afterwards is making some noise about how his training camp, his shoulder was all fucked up. Honestly, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it because you showed up on fight night. If you had postponed, you had pulled out and said, "Hey, my shoulder popped out 20 fucking times in camp. I mean, what am I supposed to do?" I'd have been like, "Shit, that's legit, bro. There you go.
Well, here's
Shoulder
the thing,
popped out
too.
20 fucking times in camp. Obviously, you can't fight. You show up to fight. Don't fucking say it. I don't want to hear it."
I mean, the only reason I think he brought it up is because it popped out. Dude, he popped it back in like 3 different times. It was pretty crazy. Like literally.
Was it? Did it pop out? No, I can't quite remember the sequence.
Bro.
In your,
still throwing.
I know, right? In your mind, was it the takedown or actions done by Sterling that caused it to pop out, or was it?
At first, I thought so, but looking back on it and kind of watching the replay, it kind of is a chain reaction. You know what I mean? Like I don't necessarily think it was the exact like cause because at first, it looks like a slam by Sterling, but it was kind of he just like pushed him over, and he was just like, boom, like tried to catch himself on the cage, and it pops out. But it was all Sterling from there. Had been multiple like sub attempts, and TJ's a tough motherfucker. He fought off those sub attempts, and he was in a bad place there for a good amount of time. But he just kept getting getting the choke on his chin and getting out of there. And you got to give him props for that. I mean, he's a champion. He went out like a champion, went out on his shield. I truly believe this is the last time we've seen TJ Dillashaw fight in the UFC.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
The way he acted after the fight, the way he's acted since, his age, accomplishments, and everything around it, there's nothing he can do to fix his legacy, first of all, and second, to ever get to a point where he will be at a higher level than he was when he was champion before.
Legacies. They're such a funny thing. It's the flavor of the month for most people to shit all over TJ Dillashaw for his EPO failure at flyweight. I really don't hear anybody like talking about him right now. And it doesn't help that he was a dick beforehand. Yeah. A lot of people just had that impression of him. Yeah. But then you've got guys like Anderson Silva, who right now the flavor of the month with Anderson is to celebrate him. Yeah. But I mean, he straight failed for fucking steroids, dude. Like straight up. But nobody's like, "Oh no, he's not in the GOAT no more." Blah 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 blah. Because people love him because he's Anderson and he had this adoration. TJ never had the adoration, and it's just curious to me the difference.
It's a case by case basis.
Exactly. You know,
because I think the reason people don't hate on Anderson Silva for that PED pop is because he was no longer champion anymore, and it was against Nick Diaz. Like it wasn't like some title fight. It was like some weird, obscure fight where neither of them had fought in 2 years, and it was weird. And then he pops, and shit happens. But
yeah, but you get the
TJ Dillashaw did it in the middle of his fucking title reign.
Yeah,
and did it when he was going for double champ status. Imagine let's just put it this way. Let's just play this scenario out. He beats Henry Cejudo that night, and he becomes a double champ.
Yeah,
and then he pops. You know how disrespectful to the sport that is, man?
Very.
Like, that's ridiculous. And a big reason he said that he didn't want to pull out of this fight, and whether this is true or whether this is something that could be construed as an excuse. He says that the reason he didn't pull out after his shoulder injury in camp was he felt he's already held the bantamweight division up too long,
Right.
and this was like he had to fight basically.
Well, he showed up. He did it. I don't want to hear about the shoulder. I want to talk about Aljamain Sterling. I mean, what more can you ask of this guy to solidify his status as champion? It wasn't his fault that Jan kneed him in the fucking face the first time. He put up with all the dissing and all the fucking flack coming his way. Then he fucking wins against Jan in the rematch. Now he goes up against the lineal fucking champion, whoops his fucking ass badly. Now we got to hear about the shoulder shit. Whatever, not his fault. TJ or Aljo's going out and doing exactly what needs to be done, and it's about time we put some respect on his fucking name.
Facts. People hate on Aljo way too much.
Fuck,
I love
dude.
Aljo. He's a.
I do too. We've been fans on this show.
I've always been a fan
years
of
and years.
Yeah.
But he's over the course of his title reign, mainly due to that disqualification win. He just caught a lot of fucking shit, and it's not fair. It's not even fair. Now when you look back on it, and I hate that phrase, but it's not his fault that Jan did that to him. And you can say he acted or he didn't act afterwards, but you can't say he didn't get kneed the fuck in the face.
I hate
and that has some sort of effect.
I hate that people even say he acted though, because it's like you're in a fight, a 3-round fight where you've been dropped prior, and then you're blasted with an illegal shot straight to your dome piece in the temple, where you're probably already concussed, considering he was dropped twice earlier in the fight. Like leading up to that, like the thing of him like faking is just so ridiculous to me. It's like, no, he was knocked out. Like, sorry, like you wouldn't call that. Let's say that they don't call that a legal knee and he falls over like that. You're saying that Jan wins by TKO. So like, what are you even fucking saying? Like, I hate that argument. Like, it's ridiculous.
It absolutely was, and I think now with time and space and other fights there, and people looking back on that, I think that's going to become clearer to other people. Unless you're just an Aljamain Sterling hater, then you are what you are.
Yeah, Aljo's a beast. This was a great performance by him, and this is exactly what he needed too. So
absolutely,
the question becomes, what's next, though?
Now, what do you think? I mean, I think clearly the UFC would like to match him up with O'Malley, because there's probably a lot of pay-per-view dollars behind there. Do you think they're going to try and get another fight out of O'Malley first, maybe have him headline a card and see if they can't get something that way?
Here's the difference, though. There is one X factor when you talk about this division. Henry Cejudo just cleared the USADA testing pool this month. And Henry Cejudo has spoken to Dana White about coming back and fighting at 135 pounds. Dana White talked about it in the post-fight press conference that Henry Cejudo is an option, and he also and then also post-fight, Sean O'Malley said that he doesn't really know if he's ready yet for a title shot, and that he's gonna go with whatever they give him, which was very strange.
That's an odd thing to say when you knock out the number one contender.
Because I'm telling you, man, I think even O'Malley knew that like that fight was not.
Could have gone either way.
Yeah, like that was not something that you should gloat about. Like, not to say that it wasn't impressive, because it was very impressive, but like O'Malley wasn't all like he was when he knocks people out. He's like, yeah, give me everyone. Ready for the championship and everything. It was more calm, more like, I'm just happy to be here. Glad I got through that, and we'll see what happens next later on. Literally all he said was the most, like, I would say, like, ego-driven thing he probably said in the whole press conference, which is weird for him because that's kind of his thing, he's super confident, like, he has fucking undefeated shirts when he's been defeated. What I mean? And he was talking about how he just wanted to go home, see his kid, and he'll renegotiate his UFC contract before his next fight, but he'll see what happens. Like he said, he's willing to fight a contender. He's willing to fight for the belt, either one. But yeah, I'm telling you, I think Henry Cejudo is the X factor here.
Well, he's the X factor for our next fight as well, because Alexander Volkanovski was the backup fighter for the main event at 155 pounds. Dana has already said on record both before and afterwards that he's perfectly down with giving him and he's the current 145-pound champ, giving him the title shot. Now that's relevant to Henry Cejudo because Cejudo was coming back specifically, he said repeatedly, to fight Volkanovski for that belt. So with him bouncing out and going up a division, Cejudo can't go to 55.
No.
I mean, he can say he can, but let's get real. 45 to me is a little bit of a stretch, homie.
Yeah.
Coming up from 25 to 45, that's about the limit.
Yeah.
55, you just size does matter.
Does matter sometimes.
So you're right. He might want to fuck around with Sterling right now, and really, that's the best thing that could happen for Aljamain Sterling's legacy is to fight Cejudo. And if you were to win, Jesus, bro, now you've beaten all the champs, you know, that were relevant in that division.
All it would take would be a Dominic Cruz.
Yeah, other than Cruz, who's you know.
Throw him a fucking title shot on his way out.
Right, give him the fucking Dan Henderson treatment.
You know, who's someone we're not talking about who actually had a much more impressive win and is in a very similar like scenario is Chito Vera. Chito Vera is coming off that head kick knockout of Dominic Cruz. He has a win over Sean O'Malley. Like, why are we not talking about Chito Vera for this title? Because he is also a name. He's also a name that Aljamain Sterling in his post-fight press conference did call out. He called out O'Malley and he called out Chito Vera. So maybe Cejudo, I don't know. The Cejudo thing I think is more a UFC deal than it is like a rankings deal. But if we're talking based off who deserves it, I would say Chito Vera is probably the most deserving of the three.
Yeah, I can't deny that. I mean,
he's got a solid following. He's actually a star, I'd say, for the UFC. He's gotten pretty big, like on YouTube and all that shit.
They should give it to Chito Vera, and then they should let Sean O'Malley fight somebody else and get the winner of the Chito Vera Sterling fight because
wouldn't that be a huge rematch?
Just to say they win. They being the UFC, they win either way. Yeah. O'Malley's bigger because he had like a headlining show or something, and he's blown up a bit more. Yeah. Some new highlight KO, you know, a la McGregor versus Seaver type of thing, or you got the rematch, Chito Vera versus O'Malley.
I feel like that'd be huge for the title. Here's one thing I did feel like before we go on to the main event. I do think this is something that the UFC. It's a good and bad thing. I feel like having these great fights and these big fight names and then having that fucking card at 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. in the afternoon, like...
I hated that.
Dude, kills me. Because all these guys, if this card was in prime time, dude, on a Saturday, like this last week, I feel like it would have smashed. It would have been huge. I didn't really see that many people like talking about it online, to be honest. You know,
I don't. Yeah, dude, I don't like it. I don't really like it when the UFC goes to Abu Dhabi. I'm just not down with a lot that they do. They seem to do when they're over there.
Yeah, I feel it.
You know,
But even then, though, sometimes when they do those Abu Dhabi cards, they fucking at least do it on American time, like as far as like the pay-per-view, because it's just if you're trying to build your stars, like you're trying to build guys like Aljamain Sterling, who is the champion, but you're trying to get him like more commercialized, and Sean O'Malley, who's like your rising star, having a fight at fucking 1:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday is not that great. You're going up against so much other free programming that is so much bigger and like more fan based than the UFC. I hate to say it, but like you know, you're going up against all these different college football games, and you're going like the slate on a Saturday afternoon is tough. There's so many more people could flip into ESPN for free and watch Ohio State versus, you know, whoever or shit like, you know, some of the biggest programs in college football versus these guys. It's not fair for these guys. Really.
And only the hardcores know the time difference.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the UFC runs ads. They're all over ESPN telling you, the general public, when the time zone is. But no one's paying attention. They just know they've been trained now. The UFC comes on Saturday night. So if you want the UFC pay-per-view, that's Saturday night. So they're like, oh, look, there's an ad for UFC. They're not listening to every word. They're not
Yeah.
seeing the time when it's on them. Most people, they're just like, oh yeah, UFC Saturday night pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get that. Like, I was talking to some friends in Colorado.
Yeah.
They're like, oh fuck, that shit was on at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
The prelims, I think they started
Yeah.
at 9.
Something like that.
It's like, yeah.
I think it was earlier than that. I think it was 8.
So, I mean, they totally missed out, and they were going to order it that
Yeah.
night.
Of course.
Didn't even get to see any of it.
Yeah.
So, is what it is.
In this like social media age we live in, if you're not ordering the pay-per-view, you will know the results of the pay-per-view whether you want to or not. You know what I mean?
Well, let's flip up to the main event. Makhachev versus Oliveira. Makhachev gets the victory. Short work.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Second round sub, arm triangle.
I
Struck
thought
him
Charles
too.
had some pretty solid success off his back in the first round. But other than that, it was just all Islam.
Yeah, I mean, Islam had a knockdown. He landed 30 strikes to Oliveira's 19. He had 2 takedowns, 1 sub. Oliveira had 19 strikes, and that's it.
Yeah, and Oliveira kind of fell into the finish. Like,
Yeah,
it was like the knockdown, and he just pretty much set up had an arm choke from that knockdown. So, yeah, congrats. You did well.
Yeah,
He's
congrats
good.
to
He's a
Makhachev. He's
beast.
good. I'm honestly, I'm not that interested in seeing him versus Volkanovski, but I guess that's what we're getting next.
Yeah, it's a weird stylistic matchup.
Yeah,
Very strange, because Volkanovski is kind of like a freestyle fighter, you know, because he's
Yeah.
not. He doesn't come from any real traditional martial arts background. He's a rugby player turned MMA fighter, so he is well rounded. But Makhachev is so good grappling wise. Like, I don't know how he's gonna keep him off him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm not really that interested in it. I think that's probably an easy fight for Makhachev.
Yeah.
Where I feel is Oliveira versus Volkanovski would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know.
I think the stylistic wise, I don't like the matchup for Volkanovski. Yeah, no.
I wish he'd stay in his own lane, but we'll see. It's not as easy to jump up and do the champ thing. Styles make fights. We'll see what happens.
But I've been wrong about Volkanovski in the past, and I wouldn't be surprised if I was again. He's a fucking elite of the elite.
He has a 20-fight win streak, 21 fights, 22, something now.
Isn't he 1 pound for pound right now?
Yeah, number 1 pound for pound, rated over Usman even now.
Yeah. So I'm
not
telling
shitting on the guy. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I'm just saying
he's moving up.
Yeah,
and that's tough. Look at Israel Adesanya. I mean,
and Makhachev has like a real like solid body style for 55. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And Volkanovski was small for 45. You know what I mean? Just like height wise, he's real small, but he's a fucking beast. So
we'll see what the UFC books. Speaking of what they've booked, that wraps out 280.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick look at next week's fight night card. What do we got? There's like 2 good fights to talk about on there.
Yeah, so a couple guys who could possibly make Volkanovski stay at this division. You got Calvin Kattar taking on Arnold Allen. It's a fucking top level
That is a barn
fight.
burner of a fight.
Yeah.
Both those guys.
Yeah, you got Kattar coming off the loss to Emmett in a real close fight, and then you have Allen, who's coming off that nasty knockout with against Dan Hooker not too long ago. This is a really good fight.
Yeah, I was surprised by Kattar's size when we met him at UFC X.
Yeah,
he's not very thick, which I guess is to be expected. It's 45, but he was tall.
Yeah,
I don't know. 45 is a tough weight class, man. Like, he seems like he has a frame to be at 55.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Allen too. Allen's a big motherfucker.
Yeah, both these guys seem like they could be upper class.
I feel like Arnold Allen is like the dark horse of this division. I feel like, you know, he's just quietly been there this whole time, getting better and better. He's had a lot of UFC fights. He's got, what, like 10 or 12, and he's undefeated. Yeah. So, like, literally, I just feel like he's never really took this crazy leap in competition. He just kind of progressed. And now he's at a level where I feel like he's elite of the elite. And I think he's going to put on a show against Calvin Kattar. I hate to say it because I do like Calvin. I'm a fan of his, but Arnold Allen, I just feel like it's his time right now.
I'm with you. Same way.
Yeah.
Same thing. The other big fight, or at least exciting fight on this card that I think will be a standout here would be Tim the Dirty Bird Means versus Max Griffin. That's at welterweight.
Yeah.
Tim is a big welterweight.
So is Max.
And so is Max. And they both come to fight. You know, Tim's been around a long time. Solid fighter. I actually like him in this. I bet Max Griffin. I haven't looked at the Vegas line here, but I bet Griffin is favored. But I like Means.
Yeah,
a
couple guys who like really put some time in the UFC as well. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You know, they've fought like two real game opponents. You know what I mean? They fought some of the best. Had some, you know, some go their ways, some not so much. And so I feel like this is really going to be a dogfight because these are two dogs. Like, you know, what I mean? I've never seen Max Griffin ever really give up in the octagon or Tim Means. You know what I mean? It's always been exciting watching both these guys. So honestly, I don't know if I'm even gonna pick this one because I would be happy with either guy winning. I think it'd come down to who shows up that night.
Yeah, I would say with just these two fights alone, if you watch this UFC card next week, the winners are going to be the fans because those are great fights.
Top notch fights.
It's free. You know, some of the free if you got ESPN Plus, and the rest of the card is okay, but those should be a couple standouts for everybody. You at least want to tune in and check those out.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
that wraps up the show for this week, huh?
That wraps us up for today.
We do have Todd Duffy joining us next week to talk about all kinds of things. There is a big announcement in between this episode of ours and next week's episode that's going to be coming from the BKFC. So be sure to stay tuned for that throughout this week, and we will be discussing it in detail with Todd on next week's show. We'll also be talking a little bit about his time in the cannabis industry as well. We're really looking forward to that.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank our sponsor for today's episode, Binoid. You can go to our website, click that cool stuff button, and follow the links for 20% off. Or you can also click on the link in both the YouTube video and our podcast main page.
Yep. Also, you can head over to SWAT MMA.com, hit the gear button, support the podcast, and then head over to Instagram and follow us at SWAT MMA Podcast.
Have a good week, everybody.
Peace.